Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. AJ Vaden here, and I'm so excited to introduce you guys to a newer friend of mine. We got connected through a mutual friend of ours, but I'm most excited to introduce you to our guest today because we share a similar passion of sales. And what we're going to talk about today and why you need to stick around is why you are in sales even if you don't know it. And why you need to also become passionate about sales, no matter what your role is, no matter what your job is, no matter if you're customer facing or internal facing, you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, small business owner, executive, or anything in between that I didn't mention. Having sales skills is one of the most important skills that you can have in life. And so we're going to talk about why that is, how do you develop them, how do you use them, and why these are important to you. And if none of that sounded appealing enough for you to stick around to the very end, then how about this? Knowing how to be great at sales is what makes you a great entrepreneur. It's also what makes you a great parent. It's what makes you a great negotiator, which if you are a parent, you know is a very important skill set to have. So like I said, these are life skills. And so we're going to jump right in. I'm going to formally introduce you to Dr. Cindy, who is a two-time best-selling author. She's got 2 books on sales. And we're going to put all of these in the show notes for you. But her first book is Every Job is a Sales Job, How to Use the Art of Selling to Win at Work. Her second and most recent is Sell Yourself, How to Create, Live, and Sell a Powerful Personal Brand, which it's part of why I wanted to have her on the show here today. She is also the CEO of Orange Leaf Consulting. She also has her doctorate in organizational communication. So these aren't just thoughts and ideas. Like, this is backed by tons of research and time and experience and expertise. And I could probably go on and on. But I want to jump in and actually do this interview. So before I get carried away with talking about you, let's talk to you. So Dr. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ. It is a pleasure to be here.
Yes. And one of the things that I want to do that I think is just really helpful is to help our audience get to know you a little bit and why sales has become such a part of your life. So where did that come from? How did you get into this? And how did you get to where you are today?
Kicking and screaming, if I'm being completely honest. So I never wanted to be in sales, believe it or not. And I was a college professor and then started consulting in the summer, as many do. Fast forward, went to work at a consulting firm. And about 6 months into that role, I got put into a sales role. And honestly, AJ, I thought I was going to get fired. I'm like, I can't do this. And I don't want to do this. I had this idea of sales was this icky thing. It was pushy. It was manipulative. It was like, I had this avatar in my head and I call him Tommy Two Thumbs. It's like the, hey, what's it going to take kind of guy. And I'm thinking, I cannot sell. Like, I do not want to sell. I never want to be that. In that role, I realized I was selling my entire life. I just didn't call it sales. And I literally struck me and I went, wait a second. I have a PhD in communication and I was never taught this. And I went to good schools. And it was like, why wasn't this part of the curriculum? And so that took me on a totally different journey. Started my company, my first company, Orange Leaf Consulting, started writing books. And so I know you guys believe in this too, is like you deliver to the person that you were. Like, you're literally solving the problem that you had. So now I write books for my 20-year-old self.
Love that. So tell me what happened? Like, what was that kind of like revelation moment when you realized, wait, I've been doing this my whole life. I just never knew it was sales. Like, what was that?
So I remember I was actually having to go and do what they called the pitch, right? At the day and time. And I'm like, ooh, pitch, it just sounds awful. Like, the word sounds bad. And when I was preparing, what I was realizing is all I was doing was listing all the problems that I had come up with in the conversations with a prospective client and how I could solve them. And I went, wait a second, all I'm doing is helping them with a need that they have. Why are we even calling this a pitch? I'm not pitching them anything. I'm inviting them to this list of solutions that are literally going to make their life and their company better. Hold on, like hold the phone. And it was really in that moment where I was delivering that first one by myself that I said, I've been doing this for years. I was calling it negotiation. I was calling it persuasion. I was calling it convincing. I was calling it inviting. And I went, okay, I have to change the script on this. So I believe that sales is a life skill, not a business skill. And I am on a mission to help people to embrace their inner 5-year-old, as I say. You know, we were all 5. You got littles, so you understand they're the best salespeople on the planet. So it's really just getting back to those innate sales skills that you already have, and then knowing how to use them to get more of what you want and help more people.
Oh, I love that. And, you know, not to go too sidetracked for a second, but, you know, I've been in sales my whole life. I consider myself the number one job I still have today, even as like CEO, is to sell, right? That recruiting, selling, interview, selling, retaining, selling, client acquisition, selling, vendor negotiations, selling, contract negotiate, like the list goes on and on. It's like, even as a CEO, I feel like still like the number one thing that I'm trying to hone on a constant basis is this concept of sales, i.e. communication. But where I find it's the most valuable at this current stage of my life is in my parenting. Like legitimately, I have these like 2 master negotiators, and everything is a negotiation, and they're relentless and persistent. And I die laughing because it's like my husband and I, who both come from a heavy, heavy, heavy sales background, are like, those little suckers are going to outlast us. like their persistence it's impressive. It's impressive. And I tease all the time. I'm like, how can I transfer this level of persistence to like our sales team, like to our business development team, this level of there's no shame in how many times you ask or how repeated the ask is. And I think I love what you said. It's like, how do we get all back to that inner 5-year-old? And as I have a 5-year-old, it's like, he knows what he wants, and he knows how long it's going to take before I crumble. Right. And it's about 45 minutes. And I'm like, fine, you can have it, whatever it is, whatever. But it's like something happens along the way, clearly, where we don't do that anymore. And probably for most of us, just like you had, and I've even had these feelings before of like, I don't want to be seen as a salesperson. There's this negative connotation with the word sales, with the concept of selling. And I would love to just kind of unpack that for a second of where did that come from? Where does that happen? Because I feel like most people would all agree that you did not grow up saying, one day I want to be a salesperson, even though the majority of even college graduates will end up in sales. Yeah. Right. So what is it about that thing where it's not something that we're pursuing when inevitably, no matter what you're doing, you're going to be doing something related to sales? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So I always joke with people and I say, you know, nobody dresses like a salesperson for Halloween, right? So it's not a job that we aspire to as children. You want to be a firefighter, you want to be this, you want to be that. You don't want to be a salesperson. But I think part of the reason is because it does have this negative connotation, because we have all been sold at some point. We have all gone through that, being the person that was sold to, where you didn't really want to say yes. You kind of felt pressured into it. You feel like your choice was taken away from you. And when that happens, you've lost your power and you've lost your autonomy. And so I think that's where people start to get that negative feeling of sales, is when we've experienced that. But you know this as a sales professional, and so do I, having worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies. That is such a minute segment of the sales world. And I would argue even those people don't want to be those people, right? So they just weren't trained properly. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it, it kind of goes to the lowest common denominator. And I think media and, you know, movies and TV portrays that guy versus really that master negotiator, that person that's really centered around building trust, helping the other person to get what they need, and finding a common solution for both. And I agree with you. I used to be a college professor, and I used to tell the students, I'm like, you're going to go on a job interview. You have to sell yourself. But it's funny because that's such a catchphrase even before I was in sales. And I was sitting here thinking, I hate sales, and I'm telling these kids this, but it was selling you. And that's the first thing. Any job interview, you're selling. And if you're not thinking about that as an entrepreneur, that pitch, that's you selling you before you're selling anything else that you're offering. They've got to trust you to be able to trust your product or your service or whatever they're going to invest in. And I know you believe in that. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but but it's so important for people to recognize sales is throughout your entire life and your entire day. And I guarantee you, every listener on today's podcast has already made successful sales this morning. You just didn't call them sales.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. What are the sales that we're all making every day that we don't realize are sales?
So first one is, if you've got kids, somehow you get them out of bed, teeth brushed, and to school with 2 shoes that match. Master salesperson right there.
Miracle sale.
Right, miracle sales, exactly. If you are negotiating with your spouse or your roommate or who, your business partner about who's going to cover this and who's going to cover that, a colleague, that is a negotiation. That is a sale. Because even if you're negotiating, like, I'm going to take this project, you take that project, you're trusting that the other person's got it, that they're going to take that ball and run with it. That's a sales conversation. Whenever there is an exchange of trust, that is sales. And so I think those are things you do all day, every day. Even nonverbal sales occur. And I guarantee your listeners have done this today. You're running to the door, you got your arms full, you make eye contact with that person to hold the door for you, and then y'all smile at each other. That's a sales exchange. We just don't call it sales.
Oh, I love even the nonverbal exchanges. And I love that concept too, is that sales is just an exchange of trust, right? And I love that concept because it really does take away some of the ickiness that we feel. And I know what, I bet most of you listening would agree with this. It's like when you've had a great sales interchange, it's like, I love it. I love when I'm like, man, that was a great sales presentation because I feel good about it, right? I feel good about the person I'm entrusting. I feel good about the person I'm paying. I feel good about the product or service I'm receiving. The entire experience was positive. And part of it is like, when it's really good, it's like, yeah, I want my money to go to you. That was great. And I think sometimes when I'm annoyed, it's like, I'm almost more mad that I have to give the bad sales experience. I have to give that person my money, even though I need the thing. I'm like, I do not want you to get paid for this because that was so bad. Like, and regardless if that's good or bad, like, a lot of my mentality is around like, I do not want to pay you. It's a you thing, even when I need it, because I'm like, that was so bad, so bad.
Yeah.
And the opposite happens too, where it's like, man, that was amazing because you know what? It felt natural. And that's how it should, right? And we have those daily exchanges every day. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're carrying boxes or a stroller or whatever. It's like those nonverbal exchanges happen. Those are like micro sales throughout your day. And so this whole concept of, we're selling all day long without even knowing it. How do we become more aware of these things? Because I know, like, one of the things you talk about, how like sales skills are life skills, right? So it's like, I think a part of that is the awareness that, okay, guys, we're already in sales in our marriages and our friendships and our parenting and our jobs and our social interactions. Like there's a sale always happening. So how do we kind of reframe how we see that, become aware of it, and then ultimately embrace it?
So I think it's kind of like the blue car syndrome where, once you buy a blue car, you start noticing blue cars everywhere. So it's the same kind of thing. Once you recognize a good sale, you start seeing that. And not only do you start seeing it, you almost start seeking it. And so back to your comment about like, you don't want to give that salesperson your money because it feels awful and you don't want to reward bad behavior. But the flip side of that is absolutely true too. And I know everybody listening has gone to a store or a restaurant and you choose that just because of the experience you had. You want to reward the good sales experience, but you didn't think about it like that. You probably thought about it as service. You probably thought about it as, oh, it was a good experience. That was a sale. They sold you on coming back, and they sold you on being an advocate for them because you left feeling so good. You want to go tell other people. So when you start to think of sales as that, you start recognizing it differently. But I do believe that it's good to have a plan. I'm a planner. I'm a hyper planner. I'm a to-do list gal. It's just my jam. But I think when you have a plan for the things that you want to occur, you're going to seek the opportunity to sell to get closer to it. Mm-hmm. So for example, take a personal one. You're looking for a new sitter. Okay. You're going to be hyper aware when you hear other parents talking about their sitters, and you're going to jump in and have a conversation. It's just because you had that plan in place. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for a website designer, you're still seeking that. And then you're going to find an opportunity to have a sales exchange. So somebody either sends you a referral or you're able to sell your way into getting that person to work with you. And by the way, even when you're hiring a vendor, you're selling them just as much as they're selling you. And I think we forget that as well. So I think that once you know what you're looking for and you have a goal and a plan in place, those sales moments start revealing themselves differently.
So, and I love that. And it's like, what would you say, like, as I'm thinking of, I'm just thinking of like the micro example of just the team that we have here at Brand Builders Group. We have client-facing team members. We have non-client-facing team members. We have a leadership team. We got all types. We got vendors, contractors, all the things, right? And so if I were to kind of pinpoint, what are some of like the universal sales skills that every person, no matter what your role is, no matter what your job is, whatever your daily things are, like, what would you say that you've identified as some of like the universal sales skills that we as just humans need to develop to be better communicators?
So the first one is your authenticity of who you are, your own personal brand, and who you are bringing yourself to the world, and what your superpowers are in that as well. You get to know people based on their own superpowers. You're the person I'm going to go to because I know you're going to get the job done fast. You're the one I'm going to go to because I know that you can take it and run with it and make it happen. You start to sell into that, right? So that's the first one, is knowing your own personal brand and being really authentic, because that's how you build trust with those around you. I say this all the time. Nobody does this life alone. Show me a person that did it by themselves, and I'm going to show you 14 people that helped them along the way. And so it's recognizing how you're creating those exchanges of trust so that you can get closer to what you need in your role, whether it's client facing or behind the scenes, whether you're in a support position or you're an independent contractor. It doesn't matter. You're selling those exchanges of trust so that you can get your project, your job done, get closer to your goals. That's the first one. Second universal one is you have to ask. And you know this in your sales training background, even seasoned sales pros, where it says it on their business card and on their signature line, they don't ask.
Yeah.
So true. You have to know what you're asking for, and you have to be clear, because if you've built that trust, people want to help you. You want to go back and reward that behavior. You want to support people, but they don't know how to support you. So you have to invite them in.
I mean, I don't want to like derail your thought train here because I want to hear the rest, but it's so interesting because we're in the process right now of building a new home, and I've been interviewing lots of different things. And anywho, I've been having this interchange back and forth via email, and I'm not exaggerating. Literally this morning, I had to send an email. So like, what's the next step? Like, how do it's like, there's been so much communication. I'm literally like, so like, how do I buy here? Like, what do I need to do here? And I literally was like, what do I need to do to get this moving? And it's amazing how often, and it's been going on for like, a week and a half. And I'm just like, listen, at some point, I'm just so frustrated that we're still in this same kind of like hamster wheel of talking about it, it's like, I'm ready to go on to the next step here. Like, what are we doing here? And I'm the one who had to engage that as the potential customer.
Awful. And so actually, funny enough, that's the third piece is you have to follow up. It's on you to be the one to. So the fact that you had to follow up like that makes me so upset because it's, you had that person right there ready and you didn't ask and you didn't follow up. And so the key to think about it is you as the person selling are doing 90% of the lift. That's the way to look at it is you're doing 90% of the lift. Make it easy for them to know exactly what it is that needs to happen, exactly how they can help you, exactly what you want them to do, and literally show them the path. It's like when people ask for reviews and they're like, oh, please review us on our website. Here's the link. Please say words like this. We would love to hear it. And please be honest. Like you make it so simple so that they're not having to chase you. And so that's the other thing is you have to follow up. And that's actually step 5 of the sales process I teach is follow up and be grateful. Be grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. And I think just telling people, right? It's like asking and then telling people what to do. And that's one of the things that I've always said. It's like for most people, they just need to be told what to do, right? Click here, write this, say this, right? It's like even me sometimes I'm like, I don't want to have to think in this process. That's why you're here, right? Yeah. I don't want to have to go through all of that. I just want you to do it, which is why I'm going to give you my money, right? And so if I'm often left to my own vices, I'm gonna forget, right? It's not anything other than as soon as this exchange is over, I'm off to my other set of 99 things that I've got to do. And if I didn't have clear instructions from you on what is the next step and when is the deadline and when I'm, like all the things, it's not that I wasn't interested. It's that I forgot.
Yeah.
And so
I think entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
I was like, just the whole idea of like, don't forget to ask and then don't forget to tell them what to do and then follow up. Yeah. I think that's.
It's so hard for entrepreneurs too, I think, when they're building their brand and when they're getting themselves out there because they have this feeling that, but everybody knows what I do. Everybody knows that I wrote a book. Everybody knows I want to be a keynote speaker. Everybody knows these things. But did you make it easy for them to help? If you've got a friend that's, part of an association and when you want to go speak there, do they have your speaker bio? Do they know the topics? Can they literally deliver it to the education committee with an open line email that says, hey, I'm so-and-so and I speak on engineering and here's what it is, make it super easy for those people around you to be able to sell for you as well. And that's another piece too, where I think we have to recognize we're not just selling ourselves, but others are selling for us and with us. And so they need to know, your network needs to know what they're supposed to be doing as well. And advocating and saying you do a great job or you give good service is sort of like, yeah, you made it into the game. It's not enough. They need to have a story to tell. Everybody that comes in contact with you is a walking, talking commercial for you. What story are they saying? Let's invite them to tell the story you want them to be telling. And that's also a sales exchange. When they are storytelling about you, they are selling you. So making sure they've got good stories.
Yeah. And it's again, get back to left to their own devices. It's like, who knows what people say, right? Yeah. It's like, we've got to go, this is how you introduce me. This is the story I want you to tell. And as you were talking, you got me thinking about this asking thing, because I think as you were talking about how, like, step 2, you got to ask, like you got to do it. Why don't people do that? And what have you found is the hesitation, the lack of awareness, whether it be fear or just sometimes complete unawareness or lack of training. But there's a huge amount of people who even self-identify as salespeople that their hardest thing is the ask.
It's so true. And I think it's a couple of things. I think you mentioned a few of them, which is they don't know that, there's this assumption that, but you know what I do. Of course, you know what I do. Like, why wouldn't you, use my services or come to my restaurant? So that's one. Second one is they don't know how to ask. So that's a lack of training. And the third one is, and we all know it, it's the fear of no. And it's that fear of, if you tell me no, my entire world is going to crumble, AJ. It's going to be awful and nothing's ever going to happen. It's like, no, no is a perfectly acceptable response. And you know this in your sales training background, and what we teach our clients too, is that's a gift. Because if it's a no, that's an exploration. You get to understand why it's no. Was your pitch bad? Did you not do a good job of understanding their needs? Did you not do a good job of differentiating yourself? Were you unclear on what the path was going to be that was going to make their life better after this sale? Were you unclear in your ask? You know, there's a lot of things that go into that. But the key is, if you're not focused as the salesperson on what's on the other side of the sale, then the no feels like, oh, I'm going to crumble. You got to be focused on what happens past that for them and for you. And if it's a no, it's a gift, because you also get to decide whether you're going to keep chasing them or not. And I have this conversation literally at least once a week with anybody we're coaching about stop falling in love with people's potential. You know, and you do that. It's like, oh, but if no, believe them. If they are not taking action, there's a reason for that. So explore it, get them to tell you yes or no, and move on with your life. You are not going to run out of prospects. There's 7 billion people on this planet. You got plenty.
Amen. Yeah. So I want to dive into that deeper too, because I totally agree with you. And as someone who has spent the last 20 years in sales in some capacity, like one of the things that I definitely in the early days, I loved hearing, let me think about it, or maybe, because like, there's hope, you know, and it felt good to not be rejected. But as the months and years went on, I became to go, this is nonsense. I mean, I've been following up with you for months. And it's like, I remember like in the early years of my sales career, who I would just be like, yes, they said maybe, right? I was so happy just to not get a hardcore no. I would be like, yes. But I remember months into my very first, kind of like, venture into entrepreneurship, and my job all day, every day was cold calling, literally out of the yellow pages. I'm not exaggerating. And me and my 3 business partners, we divided them up, and they gave me W, X, Y, and Z of the alphabet. I didn't know any better. So we'll just say that was a gift. The naivety was a gift of this horrible set of letters. And one of the things that I just remember, it's like about 8 or 9 months in, it was like, I'm an obsessive OCD user of color coding in Outlook, and purple meant follow-up. And I would have all these like micro 15-minute segments of like, and here's what I started to realize. I was like, I have no time to do anything else. All I'm doing is following up. And then I would just move it 3 months ahead. And so finally I started realizing these maybes aren't so good after all. And it was like probably like a year and a half into my sales career. And I was like, no, actually, no really is a gift. No is a gift that allows me the permission to move on and not get caught up in this emotional thing of, man, I have been following up with you with da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, I don't have to do that anymore. I just need to go find someone who would say yes. But I was so consumed with following up with the maybes that I was never actually doing a great job at finding the people who were a great fit. And when you realize that no's are not rejection, they're protection. And it's like, hey, it's like, if you're going to spend all your time with people who are actually never even going to get back to you, you're never able to actually serve the people who need what you have, who want what you have, that you can build relationships with, friendships with, because you're just stuck in this email cycle that actually is going nowhere. And so there is a lot of power in what you said of no being a gift so that you can move on. And what I'd love to hear from you, and I bet what a lot of people struggle with, is what needs to happen in our brains for no to become a gift? Because there is this fear of rejection. There is this fear of no. And honestly, for most of us, it's what stops us from ever starting. And so I would love to just kind of hear your thoughts as we're kind of like, approaching almost the end of our conversation. I think this is one of the most powerful things that can really help people embrace this concept of, well, how do we overcome this fear of no?
So the first thing is, I really believe that a full pipeline will set you free. So it's about not falling in love with the 10 prospects, but falling in love with the entire yellow pages of XYZ, not page 72. So that's the first one, is you have to cast a wide enough net. And also, it's not taking it personal, because you have to think about all of the magical stars that have to align for any sale to occur. Even that nonverbal sale of that person holding the door while you're carrying boxes, y'all had to arrive in your cars at the same time in the parking lot. You picked up the boxes. Your pace of walking was exactly the same, to the point where they were 3 steps ahead of you, and they turned their head, and you locked eyes, and they held the door. Okay, cosmic connection right there. So even when there is not money exchanged, there is trust, and it is the things that go into making that sale occur. So when you think about all the stuff that has to happen for an actual business sale to occur, maybe those stars just didn't align today. Let's understand which one was out of alignment. And do you have any control over it? Could you have done something different? Could you have put that star into alignment so the next time it does work? So I think that's the first part about it. And it is not personal. We have to remember that that no is not about you. It is about the offering of the day. And we never know what's happening in their world. And even if you ask somebody to pick up your kids, or, hey, can you water my plants when I'm out of town? We don't know what's happening in their world. We don't know why the answer is no unless we find out, but it's not about you. It's actually about them and about what's going on with them. And so when you let that go, then it actually frees you up to go and seek the people you can help more impactfully. Because remember, if you stay in that moment of no and push them, that becomes the icky sale. We don't want to be them. So that's kind of freeing in that regard, where it's like, okay, that's a no. Let me understand. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you. And you move on to somebody that you really want to help and wants your help. And I think if you reframe it that way, it's great. And then there's something I do at my workshops where I always ask the group, I'm like, okay, who's ever been told no in your life? And, every hand goes up, and I think, y'all survived. Yay. You didn't melt here. And so we have to remember that we have literally been told no all our lives, and we didn't die. Nothing happened. And so one thing that I do with newer salespeople, especially if they're cold calling, is I tell them to gamify it. Get as many no's as you can today and keep going, because you're going to recognize it's not about you, and you'll start to see those patterns, and then you can sort of change your strategy if need be. But the biggest thing is, it's not about you. It's about the fact that the universe did not align in that moment, in that day, for that sale to occur. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen down the road.
No, I love that. And I love what you said too, is that a full pipeline will set you free. Like when you have so many people to get to next, this one is not as, life consuming, right? And I think that's a really important element, like we brought earlier. There's 7 billion people on planet Earth, roughly 365-ish million people in the United States. There's lots of people to call. There's lots of people to prospect. There's lots of people out there. And for most of us, it's like we couldn't even handle hundreds of clients. Most of us are looking for dozens. And if you really put it in that context, it's like, I think we got to reshape and reform our perception on the attitude of abundance, right? And I think when you do that, and it's like, and here's the next 20 people, and here's the next 20 people, it becomes a lot less, consuming when you've got a full pipeline. And I love what you said too about this whole idea of no is research. And it's like the more no's you get, the more research you have, the more answers you have, the better you can equip yourself to cover it next time. And those are just mindset shifts that are so powerful, no matter, again, what your role is: customer service, sales, leadership, executive team, parent, whatever, every one of those is research. So I love that. This has been so helpful. And I've got one last question that I want to dive into, and then I'll let you go before we run out of time completely. You talk about this whole thing of the unofficial sale. And I'd love for you just to kind of like share with everyone, like, what is the unofficial sale?
So the unofficial sale is the one that you're making every single day, but you're not even realizing you're doing it. I call it kind of the hey, by the way sale. And it is that nonverbal exchange a lot of times, but it's also the one where it's so natural for you and it's such an opportunity for both people to get something out of it that it just feels right. You have these all day, every day, where it's, you're negotiating who's going to pick up the littles or who's going to feed the dog, who's going to take the dog out, who's going to do the laundry. And that's the home piece. At work, it's the same thing. You're going to make the copies and you're actually going to go ahead and send that email and you're going to do this. It's that quick exchange where it's just so casual, but look at it as a sales win, because the more you start identifying those as a sales win, it builds your confidence as a salesperson. I believe every job is a sales job. I believe you have to sell yourself. They're not just the names of books. Like, I really do believe this. But embrace your inner 5-year-old and recognize that these casual sales are also your opportunity to truly sell yourself. So for example, let's say that you're at a community barbecue block party and somebody is talking about needing your services. If you're not ready to bring that up in that moment and you're not ready with what you want to say to differentiate yourself, they cannot become an advocate for you. So it goes back to you being ready to tell your story as well as building that trust and really getting those exchanges in order so that they become that walking, talking commercial.
Oh, I love that. Be ready. Never know.
Be ready.
You're gonna run into that next potential client. And I believe that's so true. It's like in line at Starbucks, grocery store, T-ball game. It's like, be ready and be aware. And I love those kind of concepts of the unofficial sale. And this is one, I feel like this whole time I've been having flashbacks to like all my different sales experiences. And I love these conversations because I feel like most people who are listening would not consider themselves salespeople. And that is something that I hope as you're listening today, you leave this going, no, I am a salesperson and I need to embrace that. I need to learn it. I need to, educate myself, and I need to become aware of all of these sales moments that are around me every single day. And so I thought this was an amazing conversation. I hope that people continue this conversation. So Dr. Cindy, if people want to connect with you, follow you, buy your books, where should they go?
drcindy.com, drcindy.com, or orangeleafconsulting.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms at 1ST Lady of Sales. And I love to hear how people take this and do something with it. My favorite thing in the morning is when I get up and I see social media and somebody says, I heard you on this podcast, or I read this part of your book and I did this and it worked. And I love that. So I want to hear those success stories. That just, it fuels the mission more of helping more and more people. And when you become a salesperson, guess what? You're going to help somebody else to become a salesperson too. And I think that's the way we bring our amazing superpowers to the world, is we help elevate each other.
Amen. I could not agree more. I'll put all of those links in the show notes. Dr. Cindy, so amazing having you. So many golden nuggets. So thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And you guys heard it. Learn more, stay in touch with her, go to drcindy.com, follow her on socials, check out more, and embrace that inner salesperson that is already within you. We will see you next time on The Influential Personal Brand. Bye, guys.